Honoka was a weak, clueless bum hiding his godly power in a town of witches. However, when they discover he can give witches strength, the most popular witch baddie becomes his personal bodyguard and is willing to do anything he wants to keep his powerful baby batter from falling into freaky hands. At the start, Honoka was just a regular student who sat next to the school's hottest popular girl, Ayaka, but constantly got bullied for breathing the same air as her. One day, after his usual abuse from Ayaka's fans, Honoka takes out the trash when he spots a discarded rabbit doll in the bin. Curious, he picks it up and notices a message sewn into its fabric, marked with the school building's location. Suddenly, a massive shadow looms overhead. Honoka looks up and freezes as an entire school building plummets from the sky toward him. He braces for death, but just as he shuts his eyes, someone saves him. When he opens them, he is shocked to see Ayaka standing on a broom, hovering high in the sky like she's from Harry Potter. Suddenly, two rabbit dolls appear, attacking her with deadly intent, but Ayaka counters effortlessly, summoning fire to destroy them. As she battles, she urges Honoka to stay close, protecting him with her spells. In the chaos, Honoka hears a distant voice call his name. Believing it to be one of Ayaka's friends, Honoka follows it into an alley, only to be ambushed by more rabbit dolls. They force him to his knees, ready to behead him, but just as he's about to lose his head, Ayaka appears again, consuming the attackers in flames and saving him. Honoka, dazed and exhausted, mumbles that this is a dream, and Ayaka looks beautiful in it, confusing her. Suddenly, the rabbit dolls regenerate, and he instinctively shields Ayaka, taking the hit and collapsing. Furious, Ayaka incinerates the remaining dolls, reducing them to ashes. Honoka later wakes in an unfamiliar room, finding Ayaka seated nearby. She confirms that none of it was a dream, but tells him the full story will have to wait. For now, she escorts him home. Along the way, she reveals that he is her master and her princess, and that her mission is to keep him safe. Honoka begins to understand why Ayaka has always been close to him, silently watching over him since the start of the school year. The next morning, she suddenly sits beside him on the bus, shocking everyone. At school, students mock this ugly bum for being so close to Ayaka, but she refuses to leave his side. During class, Honoka steps out to the restroom and is ambushed by Kane and her gang, who threaten him for getting too close to Ayaka's sweet cheeks. But before things escalate, Ayaka appears, driving them off and helping Honoka to his feet. She vows to protect him from anyone who dares harm him and take him away. At lunch, Ayaka drags Honoka to the park to eat together, but he feels uneasy under the piercing stares of her fans, so he chooses to walk away. Honoka wanders the school grounds and notices the building is perfectly intact, unlike the destruction he remembers. A girl with rabbit ears suddenly approaches him, explaining that the collapse was merely an illusion spell. She introduces herself as Tampopo of the Tower Witches, and she attacks Honoka, but Ayaka intervenes. Tampopo declares that Honoka belongs to the Tower Witches and summons her entire army of rabbit dolls, overwhelming the courtyard. The next thing Honoka sees is Ayaka shielding him and getting stabbed by multiple swords. Seeing her hurt enrages Honoka, and it's here that Honoka realizes that she's doing everything to protect him, so he needs to lock the in and not let her get hurt more. Determined to stand by her, Honoka promises to help however he can because he believes in her. He suggests that they call an ambulance, but she assures him that she's made out of fire and is fine. Then, under the wave of rabbits, Ayaka blows up a bomb to free themselves, and declares to Tampopo that she will burn her to a crisp. But as Ayaka's magic burns through them all, Tampopo retreats in fear, vowing revenge. When the illusion fades, the school appears untouched, as though nothing happened. Ayaka returns to her uniform and calmly escorts Honoka home. He apologizes for avoiding her before, and though she says nothing, he feels lighter. The next day, the teacher announces the arrival of transfer students. 5 newcomers enter the classroom, but Honoka immediately recognizes one of them as Tampopo. Before he can react, Ayaka quietly informs him that all 5 are witches. Days later, Honoka is trying to make sense of his life over the past few days. Too many strange things have happened, and none of them make sense. His classmate Ayaka turned out to be a witch. A girl with rabbit ears tried to clap him dead. An army of magical rabbit dolls attacked the school, and now 5 new transfer students, who are witches, have joined his class. He's reached his limit, and today he decides he'll demand answers from Ayaka, even though she keeps telling him she'll explain someday. When he arrives at school, he immediately notices that Ayaka isn't on the bus like usual. A strange unease creeps in, and Honoka can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Following his instincts, he hurries to the classroom, but when he slides the door open, his heart nearly stops at the sight of Ayaka holding 4 of the 5 transfer students captive brutally. Honoka tries to process what he's seeing, but before he can react, Ayaka greets him as though nothing's unusual and explains that she skipped the bus because she's been busy tracking down the new students. She caught 4 of them, but one managed to escape. Honoka wants to argue, but his attention shifts to the restrained witches. He asks Ayaka to release them, insisting this has gone too far, but Ayaka refuses, especially after Honoka told her before that the 5 witches can be dangerous. One of the witches, Tenpopo, struggles against her muffled mouth guard, and Honoka urges Ayaka to let her speak, and Ayaka reluctantly agrees. Tenpopo immediately blurts out that Honoka should have trained and clapped his baby mama, Ayaka, properly to prevent this, but Honoka quickly informs them that they're only classmates. Then, Tenpopo claims that she and the others came for a peaceful school life and have no intention of harming anyone, but Ayaka calls her a liar. Pressed further, Tenpopo finally admits that she and her companions are indeed witches, and they're after Honoka and especially the white stuff inside his body. Honoka's thoughts race everywhere, thinking that these busty witches want to drain him dry. Then suddenly, the ceiling above them begins to drip with an ominous black liquid. Ayaka instantly senses danger and tries to push Honoka out of the way, but Mei, the 5th witch, drops down from above and frees her friends to deal with Ayaka, while she captures Honoka with her magic before escaping to the floor below. Mei gloats about tricking Ayaka, but suddenly, a deafening explosion shakes the room. Ayaka emerges, cloaked in fire, her eyes burning with determination. She's already defeated the other 4 tower witches and focuses all her strength on Mei. Startled, Mei orders her summoned tiger to clamp its jaws around Honoka's neck, threatening to bite him if Ayaka makes another move. Honoka shouts that he'll be fine, but Ayaka refuses to risk it and steps forward. Mei mocks Ayaka for caring too much about Honoka, but when the tiger's jaw tightens, Ayaka unleashes a devastating wave of fire that burns everything, and she notices that when Honoka gets injured, Ayaka gets the same injury. But without a choice, Mei retreats. Afterward, Honoka wakes up lying on the familiar couch. When he turns his head, Ayaka sits nearby, quietly wearing a scarf around her neck. Honoka knows she's hiding injuries beneath it and confronts her about it. Ayaka avoids the subject and instead expresses her wish for him to live a normal life, free from magic, free from danger. But someone has decided to shatter that peace, and now they must find out who. She warns him that he already knows too much about witches and magic, so there's no turning back. Honoka, however, refuses to back down. He wants to know everything from the 5 transfer students, about Ayaka's powers, and about the strange, white creamy energy everyone seems so desperate to take from him. He tells her he's tired of being protected without understanding why and declares his wish to become her apprentice. Elsewhere, in a quiet witch cafe, 4 powerful witches, Ofuku, Wani, Kronmori, and Kazane, sit together, sipping tea in tense silence. Kazane, the chairwoman of Honoka's school, confronts Kronmori about her tower witches attacking Ayaka. Kronmori plays dumb, claiming her people are acting on their own, and suggests a temporary truce, but Kazane presses her, demanding answers. So Kronmori warns her that a war is coming, and when Walpurgis night arrives, no workshop witch will remain safe. Sunday arrives, and Honoka waits for Ayaka after never spending a weekend with a girl in his pathetic life before, let alone the smartest, bustiest, and most popular baddie in school. When Ayaka arrives, Honoka asks her where they are going, but she stays silent about the place and leads him there. As they walk together, Ayaka explains the basics of the magical world and how there are 2 main kinds of witches, workshop witches and tower witches. Workshop witches maintain magical workshops across the world to protect humanity from those who misuse magic. Tower witches, on the other hand, wield magic recklessly, often to serve their own ambitions. The 2 sides have been locked in conflict for centuries, and now Honoka has become tangled in their ancient war. Ayaka warns him that if he sides with the tower witches, disaster will follow. The balance of magic will collapse, and the Demon King will be unleashed upon the world. To lighten the mood, she takes him to a witch cafe, where Honoka accidentally orders the biggest, most elaborate ice cream on the menu. Suddenly, Tuko, a fellow workshop witch and Ayaka's friend, bursts in and glaze Ayaka in excitement. Then Tuko blurts out news that Kronmori, leader of the Tower Witches, has been spotted in town. Ayaka's mood darkens instantly, and Tuko quickly retreats, whispering to Honoka to keep Ayaka safe. Leaving the cafe, Ayaka drags Honoka to the mall, where she shops effortlessly and piles bags into his arms. As they wander the mall, they notice a small girl crying for her mother. Honoka watches as a stranger, Ai, kneels down to comfort the little jit. But when Ai turns to face him, everything changes. She opens a wanted poster bearing his face and declares herself a tower witch tasked with capturing him. Before Ai can act, Ayaka appears at Honoka's side, summoning her fire. Ai calls for her allies, and they immediately unleash their magic, attacking Ayaka with everything they got from giant scissors to the Second Amendment. But Ayaka moves like a storm, tearing through them effortlessly and forcing Ai to retreat with a bang. Then, on their way back, Ayaka agrees to make Honoka as her apprentice. But after today's battle, he asks her why she doesn't just lock him somewhere safe to avoid getting attacked. And she tells him that as a workshop witch, the world she wants to protect is one where people can study and live freely, so locking him is out of the question. Then, Ayaka brings Honoka back to their school, revealing that it's not just a school, but also a hidden workshop designed to regulate magical activity in the city. As they enter the chairperson's office, Honoka finds Kazana seated comfortably, a cigarette in hand, and scolds at Ayaka's clumsy handling of the mall incident. Then Kazana turns to Honoka and welcomes him personally, officially approving him as an apprentice workshop witch, and Ayaka's plan for him has already been set in motion. The next day, Honoka and Ayaka are suddenly confronted by the Tower Witches, and Tampopo steps forward and declares that today will be the day the Tower Witches finally defeat the feared Fire Witch. Kana reminds her that Ayaka is practically invincible. Despite the warning, Tampopo stubbornly refuses to back down and orders her group to get into formation, determined to carry out their carefully planned strategy. Ayaka, however, doesn't even flinch. She turns slightly toward Honoka and tells him to watch carefully, reminding him that this is part of his training as her apprentice. In a single fluid motion, she unleashes a burst of fire magic, eating all of them in seconds, while Honoka stands frozen and gains nothing from it. Later, at school, Honoka and Ayaka stop by their lockers. Honoka jokes that with all the attention Ayaka gets from admirers, her locker must be overflowing with love letters. But when he opens his own locker, it's packed full of threatening letters from jealous students, and the sight leaves him stunned and uneasy. As they walk to class together, he admits he's almost impressed by the Tower Witch's dedication so early in the morning just to try to harm Ayaka. She brushes it off without concern, dismissing them as insignificant distractions, and instead tells him to focus on his training. In class, Ayaka hands Honoka several thick books as part of his witchcraft training. He stares at the stack in disbelief, admitting that the material looks impossibly difficult. Ayaka leans in close, her soft lips promising that she'll do whatever it takes to help him learn, and everyone around them watch in jealousy. Later, during gym class, students are paired up for tennis. Honoka and Ayaka end up as the only mixed-gender team, and Ayaka's constant attention to him makes his trouser monster more difficult to control, while drawing even more glares from their classmates. After class, Ayaka notices Honoka's exhaustion from pushing himself too hard. While waiting for the bus, he forces a smile, pretending he still has energy, and asks Ayaka for extra training. But she refuses, insisting he rest for now and promising they'll continue tomorrow. Honoka hides his disappointment, feeling like she's treating him like a spoiled child. On the bus, Ayaka suddenly tenses. She senses something strange, and that the bus itself radiates an unfamiliar, ominous magic. She turns her head slightly and spots Kronori sitting casually with Wani watching them. In a low voice, she warns Honoka not to look. The moment hangs heavy with tension. Then, without hesitation, Ayaka moves to strike first, but before she can cast her spell, Kronori counters instantly, immobilizing her with a binding spell. Kronori steps forward with clear intent on sending Ayaka to a code game, but Honoka, acting on instinct, throws himself between them and shouts that they should take him instead. To his surprise, Kronori pauses, intrigued by his boldness. She then explains a disturbing truth that Ayaka cannot truly be murdered. Even if her body were torn apart, she would endure. To demonstrate, Kronori plunges a blade into him, but there's no wound on his body. Instead, Ayaka collapses and blood blooms on her clothes, taking the pain in his place. Honoka reels in shock as Kronori reveals the truth behind Ayaka's power. Her strength comes from a contract bound to him. The damage meant for him transfers to her, and the energy within his body sustains her magic. Their lives are tied together by a mysterious pact from long ago, a connection Kronori claims to understand better than either of them. Then, with a wicked smile, Kronori produces a strange pill and offers it to Honoka, claiming it will awaken his hidden power. He hesitates, troubled by her intentions, and asks if taking her side would endanger the world. Kronori casually admits that the world itself could collapse, but she wouldn't care. In fact, she says she would enjoy watching it burn. Without warning, she places the pill in her mouth and tries to force it into Honoka's with a kiss. But before it reaches him, the pill erupts in green fire, forcing Kronori to fall back. From the flames, Ayaka rises, and her voice is steady, but she tells Honoka to close his eyes and let her transform into something not her. When he obeys, Ayaka's form shifts further, her entire body wreathed in emerald flames so intense that even Kronori can't compete against. Kronori retreats, promising that they will meet again on Walpurgis night. When Honoka opens his eyes, the danger is gone. He finds himself back at the bus station, Ayaka lying unconscious and wounded beside him. He brings her to the school's emergency room, and there he notices something left behind on her. The pill Colonel Mori had used, now cleverly disguised inside a candy wrapper. Though Colonel Mori insisted he'd take it someday, Honoka chooses not to, so he hides it carefully in his drawer instead. Days later, Ayaka recovers fully and resumes training him. She presents Honoka with a witch's robe, explaining its magical properties. Though he feels ridiculous wearing it, he quickly discovers its power when he tests it by jumping, and his leap soars far higher than expected, pissing off birds in the sky and forcing Ayaka to catch her. Ayaka demonstrates its abilities further and tells Honoka to carry her. She seems entirely unfazed, calmly explaining that the robe grants him incredible strength. But Honoka is tweaking while holding her cheeks. She then teaches him that the robe allows its wearer to summon a broom with just a snap of the fingers. Honoka struggles, failing repeatedly, until other students enter the gym. Ayaka reassures him that thanks to the robe's enchantment, they're invisible to normal eyes. Then, she takes him outside to demonstrate broom flying and stresses that they must never let civilians see them, lifting him effortlessly. Ayaka launches into the sky. Honoka clings to her in terror while she reassures him that practice will make the fear fade. They land softly on a tall building and sit together, watching the sunset as the wind carries the warmth of her presence. Honoka dozes off against her shoulder, and Ayaka gently carries him back to school on her broom. When he wakes, he spots a girl being mugged in the street below. Urgently, he begs Ayaka to help, but she refuses, reminding him of the strict rule forbidding workshop witches from using magic to aid civilians. Honoka, unable to stand by, finally succeeds in summoning his first broom and rushes to her aid. Though untrained and clumsy, he follows Ayaka's shouted instructions mid-flight, barely keeping himself steady in the air. He crashes directly into the muggers, knocking them down in a messy but surprisingly effective rescue. They mock his strange robe, calling it something out of Harry Potter, but before they can retaliate, a sudden explosion blasts them away. Ayaka lands beside him, revealing that the attackers were actually of traps set by the Tower Witches, and now that the rules have been broken, she finally has permission to fight back. The next day, the girl they saved reports to Honoka's sister that she saw someone flying on a broom. His sister reacts without surprise, hiding secrets of her own. In the depths of a dimly lit underground warehouse, several guards stand on alert, keeping Medusa imprisoned within a massive monolith deep beneath the facility. To them, it seems like an easy job, as security is airtight. The wards are layered, and Medusa is submerged in a special liquid-filled chamber designed to suppress her powers completely. Yet despite their confidence, an unsettling silence hangs in the air. Suddenly, Medusa smiles. Meanwhile, at the Witch Cafe, the 5 Tower Witches gather around a cluttered table, and seeing how Ayaka's power has made her nearly untouchable, one of the 5 witches, Rin calmly suggests that they target Honoka instead, striking when Ayaka isn't by his side. The idea catches them off guard at first, but then they realize the problem is that Honoka never leaves Ayaka's side. Their discussion stalls in frustration until a mysterious figure enters the cafe in the form of Chronori. With an air of authority, she introduces herself, her presence immediately unsettling the group. None of the Tower Witches recognize her, yet her aura commands silence. The following morning, Honoka wakes to the cheerful voices of his mother and sister filling the house. As he prepares for school, Kasumi stands behind him, drying his hair with a hairdryer. Without warning, she casually asks who's the girl who was calling on Sunday. Startled, Honoka claims it was just a classmate, but Kasumi isn't fooled, and she brandishes the hairdryer like a weapon, pressing him for the truth. She claims to know his closeness with Ayaka, which even got her bullied, and demands to know if he's clapping her or having a sudden relationship with her. Honoka stops short of revealing his identity as a witch, but admits he's grateful to be with Ayaka. Kasumi coldly warns him that she followed him on Sunday, and she knows far more than he thinks. Before he leaves for school, she warns him again that she'll be visiting his room that evening, expecting answers. On his way to the bus station, Honoka struggles with the weight of Ayaka's warning never to reveal their secret to ordinary people. Kasumi worries him most after she's already been bullied by students jealous of his closeness to Ayaka, and the thought of her getting caught up in danger eats him from the inside. He breaks into a sprint when he sees his bus pulling away, only to be intercepted by Tampopo's goons. At the same time, Ayaka waits patiently at the bus stop, unaware of the trap closing in around her. The Tower Witches ambush her, cornering her in a narrow alley. Mei steps forward, brushing her fingers along Ayaka's flawless face, openly admitting she's jealous of Ayaka's beauty and power. Meanwhile, Tampopo gloats before Honoka, taunting him that her friends are attacking Ayaka at that very moment. She reveals the secret Chronori shared that Ayaka's invincibility exists only when Honoka is nearby, and their strategy is to separate them, and Ayaka becomes vulnerable. Honoka, panicked, pleads with her to leave Ayaka out of it, insisting he's the one they're after. But suddenly, Tanpopo's gumans suddenly vanish into thin air. Startled, Tanpopo spins around and freezes. Towering above her stands a massive teddy bear, casting a long shadow over the street. To Honoka's shock, Kasumi arrives. In that moment, she reveals the truth that she is a workshop witch, assigned to protect her brother from the tower witches who've intruded on her territory. Without hesitation, she rescues Honoka, but Tanpopo refuses to back down. Summoning a gigantic rabbit doll, she challenges Kasumi to a direct fight. Their battle unfolds like Temu Godzilla vs. Kong, shaking the surrounding streets and drawing attention from the witch trio in a nearby mall. They explode with frustration when they see the colossal teddy bear and rabbit clashing outside, their blows causing buildings to crumble. Amid the chaos, their llama escapes, sending them into a fresh spiral of outrage. Kasumi struggles at first against Tanpopo's overwhelming attacks, but with precise timing, she delivers a devastating cross-punch that sends the giant rabbit crashing into the pavement. Just as she thinks the fight is over, Rin ambushes her from behind, summoning another monstrous doll that lands a brutal strike. But while wounded and cornered, Kasumi refuses to retreat. With a sharp incantation, she channels her magic, expanding her teddy bear until its massive head rises above the clouds. The sheer size of the bear shifts the balance instantly. Tanpopo and Rin attack with everything they have, but their blows can't even scratch it. Determined to protect both Honoka and the city, Kasumi seizes control of the battlefield, forcing the tower witches to surrender. Elsewhere, in the chairperson's office, Kazana is sipping tea in rare peace when morning news flashes across the screen of the city lying in ruins, and her brief moment of calm vanishes instantly. Back with Honoka, Kasumi confronts him directly, stunned by her revelation. Honoka struggles to process that his sister has been a workshop witch all along. He thanks her sincerely, but rushes to find Ayaka, fearing the worst, only to discover she is safe and chilling on Kazumi's giant doll. Relieved, he expresses his concern, but Kasumi quickly reminds him that she was the one who saved him, while Ayaka was the one who worried for him. She clarifies that her duty is to protect him during weekends, at home, and on vacations, while Ayaka's job is to protect him at school. So inviting him out on the weekends is breaking their agreement, but Ayaka, unbothered by Kasumi's protests, wraps her arms around Honoka in a possessive embrace. She declares softly but firmly that she wants to live with him, vowing to protect him every single day so he will never feel lonely again. Her sudden declaration stuns both Honoka and Kasumi into silence. Meanwhile, the confused trio wanders aimlessly through the city's wreckage until they stumble upon Wani, calmly eating fried chicken amid the chaos. When they threaten him, he responds effortlessly. Meanwhile, Kronmori concludes coldly that relying on Tanpopo's group will never be enough, and Ayaka is far more powerful than she anticipated. To defeat her, she realizes she must uncover the truth behind Ayaka and Honoka's mysterious connection. Just then, Wani returns, reporting that he has successfully gathered all 30 tower witches as ordered. Back in the chairperson's office, Kazana receives an urgent call from the workshop witch board, expecting to be reprimanded for Kasumi's reckless destruction. She instead freezes as she hears the report that Medusa has escaped, and her whereabouts are completely unknown. At Honoka's house, Ayaka, Honoka, and Kasumi sit together as Honoka hesitantly tries to ask his mother for permission to live with Ayaka. To his surprise, his mother agrees instantly, leaving both Honoka and Kasumi stunned. She explains that years ago, she met Kazana, and the two became incredibly close. Their bond grew so deep that they promised to marry one day, but because they were both girls, they eventually gave up on the idea and married men instead. Since they couldn't marry each other, they made a pact that one day their children would, and that promise now ties Ayaka and Honoka together. Just then, Honoka's mother receives a call from Kazana, and together, they give full permission for Ayaka and Honoka's marriage. Honoka's mother warmly tells Ayaka she has her blessing, which infuriates Kasumi. She tries to protest, but her mother mocks her for being a bratty, overly clingy little sister, constantly barging into Honoka's bath, forcing him to play her games and jumping into his bed to dingle his berries whenever she feels needy. Honoka tries to explain the real reason he wants to stay with Ayaka but stops himself, knowing he cannot reveal anything about witches. While Kasumi continues yelling at their mother, Honoka and Ayaka slip out of the house. Outside, Honoka apologizes for his mother's behavior, but Ayaka reassures him that she finds his family wonderful. She then asks if he truly minds living with her. Honoka admits he doesn't, and in fact, being near her makes him feel safe. Yet deep down, he senses there's something significant about their past, something neither of them can remember. Ayaka, though unsure, believes someone intentionally altered their memories. Even so, she knows one thing with certainty, that her sole mission is to protect Honoka. During the drive to Ayaka's home, Honoka notices a small plush doll that looks just like him, and embarrassed, Ayaka quickly hides it. He then recalls that Ayaka is Kazana's daughter and realizes just how wealthy she must be. That thought becomes reality when they reach her home, a towering 100-story building. Inside, dozens of maids greet Ayaka warmly, astonishing Honoka. As they enter the elevator, Ayaka reveals she lives on the 41st floor. When they arrive at her suite, Ayaka freezes to see that Medusa is already inside, waiting for them. At first, Honoka mistakes her for one of the maids, but Ayaka quickly urges him to head to the 12th floor for safety. Medusa calmly introduces herself, unfazed by Ayaka's presence, but Ayaka's greatest concern is Honoka's safety. Without hesitation, she prepares to fight to the death. As the battle begins, Honoka desperately tries to open the elevator doors to help her, but they won't budge. When he puts on his magic robe, the elevator suddenly bursts open. Inside, Ayaka is greatly weakened and struggling to continue. Honoka immediately senses the overwhelming strength of Medusa's power, especially when Ayaka tells him to flee. She reminds him she never taught him to fight, only to escape. Just as Medusa prepares to attack again, Ayaka shouts for Honoka to summon the magic broom and close his eyes. In the next instant, Medusa uses her power to turn Ayaka into stone. Horrified, Honoka begs Medusa to take him instead, but she reveals their lives are linked, and if she takes him, Ayaka dies too. Cornered and desperate, Honoka remembers the pill Kronmori once gave him, a dangerous tool meant to awaken his hidden power. Although he suspects it may be a trap, he swallows it anyway. Suddenly, a blinding light engulfs the room as Evermillion, the White Princess, manifests before them. Medusa trembles with excitement, having long awaited a chance to face Evermillion in battle. Honoka, however, calmly commands Evermillion, asking for the strength to protect his and Ayaka's future. Evermillion accepts his resolve, and their combined power shakes the entire mansion. Far away, Kazana finishes her paperwork at school and admires the sunset, until a thunderous explosion erupts from her mansion. Furious, she immediately orders Ofuku to assemble the workshop witches and track Medusa down. Meanwhile, at their hideout, Tenpopo proudly tells her group they have a new base camp, but Kana warns of strange explosions nearby. Before they can act, Evermillion's unleashed magic annihilates their base entirely. Back at Ayaka's room, Evermillion overwhelms Medusa, defeating her with ease. Honoka thanks her and Evermillion smirks, asking if he wants Ayaka restored. When Honoka desperately agrees, Evermillion whispers that he must kiss Ayaka with his whole heart. She explains that Medusa didn't turn Ayaka to stone using her gaze, but through direct contact, meaning Ayaka's defeat came not from weakness but because Honoka didn't fully believe in her, and only his kiss can reignite her fire. Honoka hesitates, but as Evermillion fades away, Medusa returns, forcing him to act. He kisses Ayaka on the cheek, and instantly, the stone cracks and shatters away. Ayaka awakens, refreshed and renewed. Furious, Medusa orders her students to attack, but Ayaka wipes them out effortlessly with a single spell. When Medusa attempts to petrify her again, Ayaka breaks free without struggle. With Honoka by her side, her full power returns, and she defeats Medusa once and for all. Later, Honoka wakes up in the school nurse's office, convinced it was all a dream, until Ayaka confirms everything, even showing Medusa alive but restrained and receiving a massage in the next room. Relieved, Honoka thanks Ayaka, and she softly kisses his cheek in return, telling him not to risk his life for her again. Back home, Honoka's mother cries dramatically, missing her son. Kasumi tries to calm her until she receives a sudden summons from the workshop witches. At school, Honoka learns a shocking truth that Kasumi, their neighbor, and even the local supermarket lady are all witches. But after seeing what happened today, Honka has an idea and brings Ayaka to his house to live with him instead, which makes his mother happy. At her hidden base, Kronori successfully enhances the power of the Tower Witches until she is ambushed and captured by the Workshop Witches. Dragged into a dungeon, she faces Kazana, who reminds her of their long, complicated history. Enraged, Kronori declares she will destroy Kazana's mansion, only fueling Kazana's fury as she prepares to interrogate her personally. In the morning, Ayaka goes to wake Honoka, and a few minutes later, Kasumi returns home after being summoned by the Workshop Witches. Excited to see Honoka back, she rushes to his room, only to discover the sight of Ayaka on top of Honoka, trying to wake him. At breakfast, Kasumi explodes with anger, demanding to know why Ayaka is living in their house. Ayaka, Honoka, and their mother stays silent. But then their mother turns the question on Kasumi, asking why she was out so late the previous night. Overwhelmed, she storms out, claiming she won't stay there anymore to hide the fact that she's a witch, something her mother still doesn't know. Her mother bursts into tears, and seeing this, Honoka snaps at Kasumi, ordering her to apologize. Though reluctant, Kasumi gives in and apologizes, making their mother cry even harder from relief. Before leaving for school, Honoka calls his mother's workplace to say she's sick and needs the day off. At the table, Ayaka and Kasumi eat breakfast together, but the heavy silence makes it awkward. Meanwhile, at school, a secret Honoka hate club meets to discuss strategies to drive him away from Ayaka. Their leader yells at the members for failing to do their job, and then storms into the science lab, berating their advisor, the science teacher, Mikage, for hiding instead of helping. She warns him that unless he finds a way to get rid of Honoka, the student council will have him fired. When Honoka and Ayaka arrive at school, they're greeted by Mikage, who asks them to come to his science lab, saying he has something important to discuss. Inside the lab, Mikage explains that he wants to resolve the growing problems at school. He recalls that Honoka transferred in his second year, which is why he never experienced Ayaka's first year, the year she became known as the school's princess. Every year, students choose someone to represent beauty, intelligence, and grace, and Ayaka won by an overwhelming margin. With her title, she became the second most influential person at school, just beneath the chairperson, her mother, Kazane. Mikage explains that the real problem isn't Ayaka, but Honoka. Because he spends so much time with her, many students, including the student council, believe Honoka is clapping her and tarnishing Ayaka's reputation with his filthy cream. Mikage reveals that the council president has threatened his job unless he finds a solution, but he's powerless since Ayaka, as Kazane's daughter, outranks even the teachers. Ayaka calmly declares that she already has a plan to settle everything quickly without dragging Honoka into more trouble. Relieved, Mikage focuses on mixing potions while Ayaka watches, but then Mikage unleashes a glowing potion that sends Honoka into a surreal, dreamlike dimension Mikage created. There, Mikage reveals something shocking that he knows about the pill Honoka swallowed during the fight with Medusa, producing an identical replica. Mikage explains that the pill isn't a blessing, but it's a poison. Honoka stays silent, remembering Ayaka's warning not to talk about Evermillion, but Mikage continues. He reveals that Honoka's body is the key seal keeping Evermillion imprisoned, and by taking that pill, he's already broken one of 5 seals. If Honoka consumes 4 more, Evermillion will be fully released. Mikage warns him that Kazane must not find out, or she'll see him as a threat and lock him away. He claims to be on Honoka's side, but admits he also wants something for himself, a chance to replace Ayaka as the person closest to Honoka. Before Honoka can respond, Ayaka bursts in, stabs Mikage, and saves Honoka. She asks him if he did anything to him, but Honoka assures Ayaka he's unharmed, and they return to class. Later, Ayaka takes Honoka to the school intercom room and orders him to call everyone to the gym. When the students gather, Ayaka grabs the microphone, stunning everyone since they'd never heard her speak publicly before. Calmly, she announces that, as the school's princess, she is firing the current student council president and appointing a new one, Honoka. The gym erupts in chaos. The president is outraged, but Kazane, watching remotely, cries tears of pride seeing her daughter finally take charge. Honoka, however, is speechless and tries to argue, but Ayaka refuses to change her decision. With this move, no one can interfere with him anymore, exactly as she planned. Then, they have a student council meeting to announce Honoka as their president and Ayaka as his vice president. Kasumi complains that the previous president was good and didn't deserve to get fired, and while Ayaka suggests that Honoka go ham and call everyone a donkey, Honoka opts to a more democratic way. He asks them to give him a chance for the time being and promises that they can fire him if he fails. After school, Honoka scolds Ayaka for abusing her authority and firing people so casually. He admits that ever since he got close to her, trouble has followed him non-stop. He asks her to trust him more, but she smiles, insisting this is all for his sake. Noticing Kasumi spying on them, Ayaka and Honoka head to a teddy bear shop to buy a gift to help her bond with them. However, just as Honoka inspects one of the bears, a giant teddy bear suddenly kidnaps him. Ayaka tries to rescue him, but is struck by a car hurled by Kasumi's giant teddy bears. Before Honoka can react, Kasumi tranquilizes Ayaka, putting her into a deep sleep. She assures Honoka that Ayaka isn't hurt, then folds an enormous paper plane using magic and takes Honoka with her, declaring they should live together, away from everyone. During their flight, Kasumi confesses she overheard everything Mikage told him and fears that Kazane may eventually become their enemy. Honoka admits that, no matter where they run, Kazane will chase him as long as the Evermillion seal remains unstable. Suddenly, a roaring sound cuts through the wind, and Ayaka appears riding a massive land dragon. She attacks, unleashing a blazing fire beam that destroys Kasumi's plane controls, causing them to spiral downward. As the plane crashes into a building, Ayala saves Honoka, but he begs her to also save his unconscious sister, and before they hit the ground, Ayaka swoops in and saves her as well. The crash draws citywide attention, sparking news coverage and chaos. The three land on a workshop building, assuming at first that tower witches caused the mess. Later, Honoka wakes up back at home, relieved to find Kasumi safe. Ayaka reassures him, saying she admires Kasumi's strong bond with him, even if she once yeeted a car at her. Playfully, Ayaka asks Honoka if she can be his little sister too. Honoka laughs, saying she feels more like an older sister, which inspires Ayaka to lean in close and whisper for him to call her mommy. For hours, Ayaka teases Honoka, making him repeat it until she eventually falls asleep satisfied. Honoka notices his school bag destroyed and worries about the ruined teddy bears he bought to help Ayaka and Kasumi bond. Meanwhile, their mother naps peacefully, unaware that Kazane has just left her a voicemail that she's coming over to discuss her daughter and Honoka. The message sends Honoka's mother into ecstasy, knowing her old scissor lover is on the way. On a quiet morning, Honoka and Kasumi sit with their mother, who confesses that, after her marriage, she got creamed by a random dude and secretly gave birth to another child, and this child is coming to live with them. Honoka and Kasumi hold their breath, hearts pounding, until their mother finally reveals the name, Ayaka. Kasumi lights up with excitement, but before Honoka can process the news, he suddenly jolts awake. It was only a dream. Then he finds Ayaka in an apron cooking breakfast. They share breakfast and wash dishes side by side, looking almost like a married couple, a sight that irritates Tampopo. Honoka blushes when their hands touch, flustered by their closeness. Curious, he asks about his mother and Kasumi. Ayaka explains that Kazane stopped by earlier, questioned them, and took them somewhere safe. Kazane also wants to speak privately with him later, leaving Honoka uneasy. Meanwhile, Tampopo stews in frustration as the night before, Ayaka hides Medusa and the other tower witches in a spare room. Tampopo fumes at living under the same roof as her rivals, but Medusa reminds her they must obey those who beat them. Tampopo blames Medusa for their loss, demanding why she didn't use her full strength. Medusa calmly admits she underestimated Ayaka, focusing instead on capturing Honoka without causing destruction. She warns them to be grateful for this sanctuary, as being caught by Kazane would be worse. Medusa then told her and the others they could lead if bored, but Tampopo instead plots to regain her pride by defeating Honoka. Late at night, she sneaks downstairs with her companions, hoping to attack him in his sleep. However, their plan fails when they find Ayaka still awake and watchful till the morning. Later, Honoka studies with Ayaka but grows frustrated, wanting combat training instead. Ayaka refuses, fearing he'll get hurt, and Honoka feels smothered by her constant protection. Then rain begins to fall, and he asks for help bringing in the laundry, and they work together outside. When they return, Kazane, Kasumi, and his mother are back. Honoka's mother asks Ayaka to help prepare a gift while urging Honoka to dry off in the bathroom. Inside, he notices the shower light on and discovers Tampopo's companions bathing. Startled, he tries to retreat, but they panic and restrain him. Emerging half-dressed, they immediately draw Kazane's attention. Realizing the danger, Kazane swiftly puts Kasumi and Honoka's mother to sleep, preparing to capture the tower witches. She orders Ayaka to assist, but Ayaka refuses, stepping in to protect them. Kazane freezes, shocked her daughter would defy her, and senses she's hiding something. Kazane then orders Honoka to control Ayaka, but remembering what Mikage say, he knows that Ayaka has a plan and instead orders Ayaka to keep fighting. Ayaka then calls for Medusa. Invoking their secret pact, Medusa fuses with her and Ayaka's power surges. At that moment, Honoka experiences a vision of the past. He sees Ayaka and Medusa's original battle and learns Ayaka spared Medusa instead of ending her. Later, Ayaka offered a fusion pact using the Apple of Discord, a magical artifact merging two witches' powers. Ayaka sacrificed part of herself to shield Honoka, and Medusa accepted, intrigued by Ayaka's strength and the chance to challenge Kazane. Back in the present, Ayaka fully merges with Medusa, and Kazane realizes Medusa's intent is to raise a successor. Refusing to let Ayaka fill that role, Kazane engages her in battle. Their clash shakes the house, Kazane's raw magic colliding with Ayaka's fused power. At one point, Kazane risks being turned to stone, but just as Ayaka believes she's won, Kazane shatters free and seizes her by the collar, smiling coldly as she prepares to strike. Unable to watch, Honoka uses his switching magic, taking Ayaka's place and receiving the blow instead. When he awakens, he finds himself in a dim room covered in strange markings. Ayaka explains they're in a punishment room, a magical prison Kazane controls, and escape is impossible. She reveals Kazane forbade her from breaking the protective school shield, as its destruction would put Honoka in danger. Ayaka praises Honoka's switching magic, calling it rare and precious. She then reveals that because Honoka has broken a seal, Kazane will now hunt them, which was what Ayaka chose to side with Medusa to guarantee his safety. But now, her plan is to defeat Kazane and force her to be their ally. Honoka isn't sure about fighting Kazane, but to secure his cooperation, Ayaka leans close, teasing him until he agrees. She explains his bond with her was strong enough to break her petrification and wants to strengthen it further. Honoka expects a kiss, but Ayaka surprises him by resting his head on her lap, urging him to relax. Elsewhere, Kazane plays checkers with Kronwari, her old friend and rival. Kronwari criticizes Kazane for her reckless schemes and for releasing the Tower Witches. When she mentions Medusa, Kazane recalls capturing her long ago, only to be forced to release her to a Rothenburg workshop witch covered in magical tattoos, a humiliation she's never forgotten. Their game is interrupted by an explosion at the school. Kazane and Kronwari rush to investigate. Discovering Ayaka has escaped the punishment room, Ayaka challenges her mother again, but Kazane declines, saying there's no need to fight. Instead, she orders Ayaka to help clean up the chaos she caused. Relieved, Ayaka and Honoka return home. Despite the calm, Kazane remains unaware that the protective seal she warned Ayaka never to break has already been shattered, which Honoka is relieved about. Kazane assigned Kane and Tuko to accompany Ayaka to look after her, since they were the same age. Both girls respected Kazane and agreed, though puzzled by the request to act as Ayaka's babysitters. On their first day at the all-girls school, the trio arrived late. Then, during roll call, Ayaka ignored her name, forcing Kane to remind her to respond, a habit that would continue. During tennis practice, Ayaka again refused to return the ball until Kane explained the rules. With one effortless swing, Ayaka sent the ball back with incredible skill, shocking everyone. Later, when the teacher asked Ayaka to solve a problem, she stayed seated in silence. Kane urged her to participate, and when Ayaka finally did, her perfect solution stunned the class. It didn't take long for her to become the most admired and popular girl in school due to being athletic, intelligent, and beautiful. At lunch, Kane asked if this was Ayaka's first time attending school, noticing how she only acted when told. Suddenly, students crowded around. Eager to be her friend, Kane stepped in, claiming Ayaka was shy, but the students called her out, telling her to stop acting like her manager. Hearing that, Ayaka walks away, but the two follow her, and feeling responsible under Kazane's orders, Kane confronts Ayaka later, urging her to make friends. Ayaka stayed silent, frustrating Kane, until Tuko remarked that being close to Ayaka was more meaningful than befriending the entire school. A few days later, the midterm results posted Ayaka, Kane, and Tuko among the top scorers, attracting upperclassmen's attention. But then, they are dragged to the rooftop, where Kane and Tuko were held hostage by them, while the seniors demanded Ayaka submit to them. Calmly, Ayaka smacked her and stated that only one person had the right to command her, and secretly used fire magic till the seniors collapsed, leaving Tuko and Kane shocked. After school, Ayaka led them to an all-boys school, and Kane was surprised when she realized that the one person Ayaka was referring to was here, and Ayaka had a crush on him, which turned out to be a pathetic bum loser like Honoka. From then on, Ayaka trained relentlessly, eating more, exercising, and refining her beauty, all to impress him. By their next year, Kane reflected on their year-long friendship, while Ayaka stayed quiet, her gaze fixed only on Honoka, who had just entered their school. But when she finally approached him, her heart sank upon seeing him with another girl. Unaware it was his sister and not a potential baby mama, she suddenly wakes up from that dream and wakes him up for school, but he smiles back and explains he dreamed about her, the same one she just had. Meanwhile, Kasumi wakes with a headache after being knocked out by Kazane. Feeling strange lately, she heads to the kitchen, finding the 5 Tower Witches eating breakfast after Kazane had allowed Ayaka to let them stay. While cooking, Kasumi is told to check on Honoka. Opening his door, she's shocked to see him playing doctor, with Ayaka dressed as a nurse. Flustered, Honoka explains that their mother gave her the outfit and Ayaka is only checking him after he broke one of Evermillion's seals. At breakfast, Kasumi scolds Honoka for letting Ayaka act irresponsibly. On the way to school, Ayaka warns him to take the seal's matter seriously. In class, Honoka tries proving his worth as student council president, but when Mikage asks him to solve a problem, he freezes, earning Tampopo's mockery. Later, chaos erupts downstairs and Ayaka calmly explains this rebellion is against him. the new president. A costumed group confronts him, handing him a letter demanding he meet them in the gym after school. Though Honoka doesn't catch the girl's name, Tuko later reveals she is Rainan, who was misled by the former student council president into believing Honoka took advantage of her. So Rainan started the riot. Ayaka accuses Tuko of betrayal, but Honoka refuses to leave this to Ayaka, determined to solve it himself. At lunch, Ayaka explains about Rainan's reputation of being a delinquent queen, famous for strangling an actual tiger named Bear. She's been absent for months, which is why Honoka hasn't met her before. Tampopo mentions Kronori, who is now acting as chairperson while Kazan is away, which explains why the school hasn't been shut down, as Kronori enjoys the chaos. After school, Honoka prepares to face Rinan. Ayaka surprisingly lets him go, but gives him a strategy that when she throws a straight punch, dodge, step in, and slam her down. Inside the darkened gym, Rinan attacks immediately. Her punch is relentless. Honoka is beaten badly until he follows Ayaka's advice, dodging and slamming her down. Blushing at the closeness, he hesitates to strike, unwilling to hit a girl. The lights go out, and Rinan panics as Tampopo's group surrounds her, but she knocks them aside. Ayaka steps in, defeating her with a fiery punch. Honoka, bruised but standing, is lifted by Ayaka as the lights return, making it seem to the entire school that he defeated Rainan by himself, earning instant fame as the strongest president. But later, it's revealed Ayaka orchestrated the entire incident. A week earlier, she met the former president, who admired her deeply and manipulated Rainan into starting the riot, all to boost Honoka's reputation. In the present, students cheer for Honoka, believing he saved the school from Rainan, unaware it was Ayaka's plan from the start. After school, Kane, Tuko, and the former president visit a cafe. The ex-president fears Ayaka dislikes her, but Tuko and Kane reassure her. Tuko even confesses she secretly washed Ayaka's underwear for 6 months as a prank. Knowing this, Ayaka never got angry and remained her friend, easing the ex-president's worries. After defeating Rainan, Honoka is asleep, experiencing a wet dream where he and Ayaka vacation at her beach house, where they clap day and night to make their own mini-witches. But he wakes to find Ayaka sitting beside him, bruised but awake, while the others remain passed out in his room. Seeing how battered he is, Ayaka decides to train him. That afternoon, she brings him to a rooftop in the middle of the city, declaring herself his teacher and make him wear the Phil Witch clothing. Honoka questions her sudden change, but Ayaka insists it's only a matter of time before he needs strength of his own, and says she knows about his secret training. Pressed, Honoka admits he works out and bathes with his own busty sister to learn magic tips for self-defense.
Cap.
But Ayaka is furious. Warning him to prepare himself, she summons a fire creature for his first lesson. Controlling and manifesting power, she helps adjust his stance, and Honoka squirms as her milky melons press against his back. Being almost close to busting, he shouts at her to back off a little and criticizes her hands-on teaching style. Irritated, Ayaka orders her fire creature to attack and that Honoka needs to fight it off. But the beast overwhelms Honoka, and he struggles against it, forcing Ayaka to step in and ends the session early after spotting him wounded. However, Honoka protests angrily, demanding tougher training, saying that he wants to get stronger as soon as possible. Accepting his challenge, Ayaka grabs him by the collar, drags him to the edge of the building, and throws him off the rooftop, ordering him to fly. As he falls, Ayaka follows down on her broom, shouting for him to find his true strength to save himself. Terrified of dying, Honoka searches strength deep within himself. First he sees Evermillion, then Ayaka looking like a total snack. Just before impact, his hand brushes Ayaka's, summoning a colossal Ayaka in a nurse uniform. In that moment, the 5 crusty stooges have just made a home gym in that same building, and Honoka's creation destroys everything. Shocked, Honoka learns he created a gigantic version of her, but the energy drains him, and the giant vanishes as Honoka faints. On that same building, Kronori and Mikage sip tea, watching Honoka's power unfold. Mikage explains that he broke Evermillion's second seal during the Rainan fight, and Kronori smirks, saying Kazan must never find out about it and they have to wait until Honoka breaks all the seals, then force him to take the pills. Deep in the sewers, Rainan finds Kazane in front of a magical circle and warns her that the Tower Witch's messenger has told her that they have taken the entire town hostage. Back with Honoka, Ayaka carries his unconscious body and flies away, reflecting on his reckless actions. When he wakes, he states that he knows that she is training him only because she fears his growing power from Evermillion after what happened in his fight against Rinan, and he thanks her for saving him that day, Ayaka reveals that this is true. They later watch the sunset together, where Ayaka recalls a dream of a boy promising they would attend school, grow close, and share burdens with each other. That dream of hers led her all the way to Honoka, but when Honoka asks her what she's thinking about, she shakes off the memory and reminds him that final exams are next week, which is more important than training. Elsewhere, Kazana stands in her office when the evil witch, the Weekend, suddenly pops up to confront her directly, claiming she's here to negotiate. The Weekend reveals the magical flower-like object Kazana saw in the sewers is a bomb, and Kazana agrees that to prevent people dying, she's willing to negotiate, but the Weekend suddenly declares she doesn't want to negotiate. She says that while she does want to her hands on Honoka, she's not willing to deactivate the bomb, and she calls Kazana naive for thinking that she would. She knows that because a workshop witch's job is to protect the city they are living in, their powers are directly connected to it, and explains that while the bomb's explosion won't harm Kazana in the slightest, destroying the entire town and everyone inside it will drain her magical powers completely by forcing her to use her power to protect everyone. Before Kazana can react, the Weekend blows up the whole city. At school, just as exams is starting, the Weekend's bombs hits them. Panic erupts. When an explosion nearly hits him, Honoka abandons the exam, and Ayaka pulls him to safety. Being weakened, the Weekend imprisons Kazana, boasting that with Chronori and Medusa's help, she will claim Evermillion and let the Tower Witches rule the world while Kazana rots in a week. At school, Ayaka leads Honoka to a hidden storage passage in the back of the school, revealing a vast underground workshop. Stunned, Honoka finds Kasumi and Rinan waiting there. Kasumi introduces Rinan as her teacher and explains that Atori and Natsume also work there. Before Honoka can ask more, Natsume suddenly shoots him.
Starts a conversation like that. I just sat down.
When the others attacks, Ayaka moves to protect him, but falls unconscious to Honoka's gun wounds. Atori moves to finish her off, but Honoka shields her, realizing they need him alive. Rinan knocks Kasumi out and asks Honoka to come with her deeper underground to keep him there for another purpose. She says that she can't say anything, but promises to tell him anything once everything is over, including her bust sizes if he wants.
What do you mean by that?
She opens the door to their prison and warns that she will cut his willy off if he tries to escape. Locked in a prison with Ayaka, Honoka notices the skylight above him but cannot use magic to escape. When Ayaka wakes up, he asks her what's happening. She admits she doesn't know either, but suspects that Kazana has lost her power or she's been captured somewhere. Suddenly, a teddy bear drops into their cell, projecting the Weekend's message announcing her arrival. Before it finishes, Ayaka crushes it underfoot, and the bear explodes, blowing a hole in the wall. Ayaka declares she remembers the Weekend's face and vows revenge. But first, they need a plan and a way to escape without magic. Ayaka and Honoka have been walking for hours since escaping their prison. Ayaka leads him toward the longest exit, explaining that no one uses it, making it the safest route. She assures him they will emerge from the mountain, which is far from danger. Finally, they reach the exit door, but when Honoka opens it, he freezes, seeing that his beloved city lies in ruins. Horrified, Honoka panics, worried for his mother and the ordinary people living there. Tears well in his eyes as he asks Ayaka if this is his fault. Calm but stern, Ayaka explains that the city was destroyed because the enemy is after him, though even she doesn't know how to stop them. She tells Honoka to be strong, as right now, they must prepare for the battle of their lives. She reminds him that in their battle against Medusa, it was him who helped her win, and he needs to do it again. At the workshop, Natsume gathers the others and warns that without Kazana, their magic power will vanish. Tuko and Rinan fear the city may already be surrounded by Tower Witches, and with reinforcements days away, they are badly outnumbered. Natsume reveals they need a witch with ultimate power to restore the barrier that sustains their magic, but whoever accepts the task will die in the process. Meanwhile, Ayaka and Honoka walk through what's left of their city, vowing revenge. Ayaka suspects the enemy's next move is to infiltrate the workshop witches, but she knows the Tower Witches cannot enter without openly declaring war. She hurries Honoka along as the sun sets, explaining that the workshop witches' leader made a contract with the city. That contract uses the witches' energy to protect the town, and Kazana sacrificed her own power to maintain it, which is why she fell into the enemy's hands. Honoka breathes easier when Ayaka assures him the people are safe in a hidden sanctuary secured by Kazana. As they climb a steep road, Ayaka explains that once they return, the city will rebuild itself automatically, but they must come up with a believable cover story. Distracted, Honoka slips on a rock and tumbles down the slope. Ayaka dives after him, saving him from a fatal drop without using magic. Shaken, Honoka apologizes, blaming himself for them falling, but Ayaka assures him that it's fine and that down here is where they're supposed to go. The contractor's location, Back at the workshop base, chaos erupts when a messenger witch arrives strapped with a bomb. She demands they hand over Honoka within 30 minutes, or she will destroy the entire base. On the school grounds, Tanpopo, Kasumi, and their friends spot a blonde girl in a red hood, one of the tower witches, holding a workshop witch hostage, with few fighters left. Kasumi and Tanpopo prepare to attack. Elsewhere, Kazana, still imprisoned, calmly crafts dolls to pass the time, thinking of Honoka and Ayaka. She hopes they're safe so she can rest easy. Underground, Honoka and Ayaka encounter Gibraltar, a tower witch who immediately attacks. Gibraltar mocks Ayaka for being powerless without magic and moves in for the finishing blow. Honoka tries to intervene, but Ayaka refuses his help. At the last second, she slips free and delivers a flying knee strike, destroying her defense and knocking Gibraltar out cold like she's prime John Jones. Buried under rubble, Gibraltar demands to know how Ayaka defeated her without magic. Ayaka explains she was trained to fight puny, pathetic witches like Gibraltar since childhood, making this easy, and Honoka is left in awe. Back at the workshop, Tuko informs Renan that they cannot contact Ayaka and Honoka, as they don't even know the two had escaped. Renan plans to use Honoka as bait to lure out their enemies, but never intends to hand him over. Suddenly, the bomb-strapped messenger reveals she is being threatened by the blonde witch in the red hood. Tuko then receives a message from Kasumi, confirming she has located the blonde witch holding more hostages. Elsewhere, Kronori has just woken up in her destroyed room, annoyed of the current destruction, but when she hears that the Weekend is involved in this attack, she gets up, determined to join the battle and bring down the Weekend to her knees. Ayaka and Honoka finally arrive at the workshop witch's sacred place, the heart of the town. Ayaka explains that Honoka must make a contract with the city to restore its barrier. Meanwhile, Renan and the others confront the blonde witch, desperately negotiating for more time. The blonde mocks Renan's weakness, claiming she would never survive a fight without magic, but Kasumi notices the blonde repeatedly calls herself weak. Realizing she is just a negotiator, Kasumi instructs Tanpopo to stall while she searches for the real witch holding the detonator. Renan feels slightly reassured, but they only have 7 minutes left. In the sacred place, Honoka prepares to make a temporary contract with the city. Ayaka tells him he's ready and says she's the one who decides that, making him blush. As Honoka steps inside, he feels his energy draining while the barrier is rebuilding. The bomb's timer ticks closer to 0. Suddenly, Renan feels her magic return. Kasumi can't find the detonator, forcing Tanpopo to attack the blonde before she can trigger the bombs. Renan, enraged, lands a heavy blow, knocking out the blonde witch's tooth. Realizing the workshop witches have regained their power, the blonde smiles and surrenders. Natsume and Renan imprison her in handcuffs that nullify magic until Kazana returns, but the blonde laughs and taunts them, revealing a chilling truth that the witch who defeated Kazana is still alive, and is far stronger than they realize. She warns that Renan and the others are too young, too inexperienced, and nowhere near ready to face true veterans of war. Even so, Renan regroups, while Kasumi scouts outside as their magic slowly regenerates. Suddenly, the blonde claims she has something to show them. She strips off her cloak, revealing grenades strapped to her body, and pulls the pins. The prison explodes, engulfing her and Renan in fire. Elsewhere, Honoka awakens after fainting from the contract. Ayaka tells him to rest, but he insists on fighting to save everyone. As they leave the sacred place, he suddenly senses Renan and Natsume in danger and spots the blonde witch escaping prison with an accomplice. Moments later, another explosion rocks the workshop base, weakening him further. Unable to watch others suffer, Honoka attempts to use his sacred power to restore the witch's strength. Ayaka sees him in agony and refuses to let him destroy himself. With a sharp headbutt, she knocks him unconscious and carries him away, determined to face the danger herself. Elsewhere, Kronori wakes and demands dinner from Wena, who informs her the city was destroyed by the same witch who defeated Kazana. Delighted, Kronori changes her plans, and she intends to meet the Weekend, the one who once used her, because now she plans to use the Weekend instead. Meanwhile, Honoka dreams of being back in his classroom, but something feels off. The air is heavy, and the atmosphere unfamiliar. He spots a girl surrounded by classmates, mocked and bullied for her chopped face, and gets called Hamster Face. To his shock, he realizes the girl is his own mother. Everyone joins in the ridicule, everyone except one student, Kazana, furious. Kazana announces she has just returned from suspension and cannot stand by while someone is being harassed. She storms forward, forcing the bullies to back off. Honoka watches in awe as his mother's eyes fill with gratitude. From that day, she and Kazane became close friends. The dream shifts. Honoka now sees his younger self walking beside Kazana, holding her hand. Then the scene changes again and he sees Ayaka standing before Kazana, confessing that she has found the one she desires. She declares she wants to be in the same class as him and intends to make him the most important person in her life. Suddenly, Honoka is pulled from the memory and comes face to face with Mikage, who calmly greets him and welcomes him to the magical world. Mikage explains that Honoka has signed the town's contract, and what he saw were fragments of Keizana's memories, the previous contractor. But he warns Honoka not to linger too long inside her past. Mikage then apologizes for Natsume tranquilizing him earlier, startling Honoka, who learns that Natsume is his niece. Mikage explains that despite her incredible potential, Natsume refuses the leadership role destined for their family's long lineage of witches, guiding Honoka through the heart of the magical world. Mikage shows him a vast expanse of light representing human souls. He assigns Honoka a critical task that he must guide the city's people to this place until the world is rebuilt, allowing Mikage to erase painful memories they no longer wish to carry. Honoka is stunned to learn Mikage's magical power is the ability to erase memories. Meanwhile, in reality, Ayaka tends to Honoka. Carrying him home, she gently lays him in bed and keeps watch for hours as he tosses restlessly in his sleep. Her vigilance breaks only when she senses someone approaching the front door. Elsewhere, Tenpopo searches for her missing friends when the ground suddenly trembles. Looking up, she sees Kasumi in a fierce battle, riding atop a giant teddy bear against one of the weekend's crewmates. Confident, Kasumi performs an acrobatic somersault, believing she's won, until her opponent rises and summons a perfect replica of her teddy bear. The enemy's magic is replication, and every move Kasumi makes, the opponent mirrors. The fight escalates quickly, and Kasumi crashes into a school building, causing debris to collapse, sending one of Tanpopo's friends plummeting. Forced to choose between victory and saving her friend, Kasumi rushes to the rescue, leaving herself open. She's struck by a brutal uppercut and falls, helpless as her opponent raises a massive axe for the final blow. At the last second, Medusa appears, turning the enemy to stone. Kasumi stares in shock, unsure if Medusa is friend or foe, especially as Tanpopo's friends surround her. Medusa berates them for standing idly by and takes control of the situation, declaring she is once again on the run from the authorities. She seizes the students and flees, forcing Tanpopo to chase after them, even as the tattooed sisters close in on Medusa's trail. Back at Honoka's house, Ayaka consults one of her informants, a living doll. The doll delivers a scroll and warns her about Kronori, who has been quietly tracking down Tower Witches, but has yet to make her move. Ayaka entrusts the doll with guarding Honoka, still suffering from the strain of the contract she forced upon him. The doll urges her to fight for the sake of the city and her friends. When Ayaka requests a weapon, it grants her a sword without hesitation. Determined, she goes to confront the Weekend. Ayaka arrives at an old church on her broom and finds the Weekend waiting, calmly gazing at the ceiling. The Weekend tries to speak, but Ayaka attacks immediately, her anger and resolve unwavering. The Weekend blocks easily and warns her that bombs have been planted throughout the area. Meanwhile, in the magical world, Mikage sips tea with Honoka and confesses he was the one who erased Honoka's memories of Ayaka. Furious, Honoka struggles to process the betrayal, but before he can respond, enemies suddenly breach the magical realm, catching even Mikage off guard. Back at the church, the Weekend launches bombs at Ayaka, noting her weakened strength without Honoka nearby. The Weekend offers her the chance to retreat, but Ayaka refuses, fighting with only her sword, slicing through explosions without magic. The Weekend underestimates her, and Ayaka pushes her back, even slicing a lock of her hair. Cornered, the Weekend detonates the ceiling, believing Ayaka is crushed beneath the debris, but Ayaka emerges unscathed, her spirit unbroken. The battle intensifies, and though Ayaka is exhausted, she lures the Weekend close, seizing her hands and channeling searing power into her opponent. The Weekend burns, stunned by Ayaka's strength, as Ayaka reveals she swapped uniforms with Honoka so she can draw strength from him. Ayaka spares the Weekend's life and turns to leave, but the Weekend reveals her true power, rapid regeneration. Smirking, she summons a massive dinosaur to continue the fight. Elsewhere, Atori watches Honoka thrash in his sleep, guided by her talking doll. In a strange attempt to ease his condition, she places an onion on his cake.
What?
Discovering Ayaka's uniform on him, she undresses him slightly to cool his fever. In the magical world, Mikage fights off the Weekend's invading forces, but, fearing for Honoka's safety, sends him back to reality. Honoka wakes, shocked to find himself half undressed, and quickly tells Atori to turn away as he redresses. The doll explains they are protecting him while Ayaka battles the Weekend. Suddenly, Mikage contacts them, warning that the Weekend's forces have planted bombs throughout the city, including inside Honoka's house. Though Mikage urges him to stay put, Honoka refuses to remain still while Ayaka is in danger. With Atori at his side, he takes off toward the church. Tampopo catches sight of Honoka flying past just as the church explodes. Inside, the Weekend reveals her grand plan that is years in the making. Unlike Ayaka, she lacks overwhelming offense but possesses unmatched healing and destructive abilities. Honoka bursts into the collapsing church. Finding Ayaka gravely injured, the Weekend commands her forces to capture them both, seeking Evermillion's blood. Cradling Ayaka in his arms, Honoka pleads for her to rise and save the city. Stirred by his resolve, Ayaka awakens, and her power surges back to its peak. Together, they defeat the Weekend's forces. Ayaka confronts the Weekend directly, demanding the detonator, but the Weekend smiles coldly, revealing she has already activated it. Across the city, the bombs begin to tick. As Tampopo walks through the ruined streets, Kasumi's teddy bear approaches her. It tries to speak, but she cannot understand its frantic sounds. Frustrated, she summons one of her rabbit dolls and orders it to translate. Through the doll, the teddy bear explains that Kasumi is badly injured. Inside the church, the Weekend calmly tells Ayaka that the bomb has already been detonated. It was never on a timer, and she had only been waiting for Honoka to arrive. In the magical world, Mikage works tirelessly to protect lives. But he suddenly senses something terribly wrong. The ground beneath him erupts, and the devastating explosion tears through the city. Honoka watches in horror as star-like lights, which are the souls of countless people, begin to vanish one by one. The Weekend notices his reaction and mocks him, but Ayaka silences her with a glare. Honoka, desperate to save everyone, pushes himself to break the final Evermillion seal. Even knowing the danger, Ayaka senses his rising energy and rushes to stop him, but before she reaches him, he collapses. Honoka's consciousness drifts away, and he awakens within Evermillion's realm. Evermillion stands before him, telling him he should never have forced this situation. She explains that they are inside the last protective barrier and that she already knows his wish, which is to restore the city and its people. She offers her power but warns that the cost will be his life. Honoka hesitates, realizing that if he dies, Ayaka dies with him since their lives are bound. Suddenly, he awakens back in reality, wielding Evermillion's immense power. Before everyone's stunned eyes, including Ayaka's, he restores the entire city. Ayaka rushes to his side, holding him close. Honoka apologizes for risking his life, but she forgives him and embraces him tightly. Then, without warning, Ayaka steps forward and shouts at Evermillion to take her life instead of Honoka's. In that instant, her powers vanish, and she collapses. Honoka barely reaches out before the Weekend seizes the chance and stabs him in the back. She blames him for ruining her plans, declaring she has no choice but to end him. To her shock, Honoka pulls the knife out and turns it toward her, but instead of ending her, he spares her life, explaining that his power saved everyone, including her, and that she has exhausted her magic if she's resorted to a blade. Honoka collapses from the strain of restoring the city. The Weekend, moved by his mercy, orders her followers to heal him before leaving, and she promises they will meet again and departs with her subordinates. Hattori soon arrives and sees the Weekend walking away in defeat. She enters the church and finds Honoka holding Ayaka in his arms. Before she can speak, Mikage contacts her. He assures her that he is safe and confirms the world has returned to normal thanks to Honoka. Mikage asks to speak directly with Honoka, but Honoka, shaken, insists he has done nothing. He clutches Ayaka, panicking as he realizes she isn't breathing, though her body remains warm. Mikage explains that the contract Honoka made forbids one life from being sacrificed for another, meaning Ayaka can still be saved. Recalling Ayaka's desperate attempt to give her life for him, Honoka clings to hope, while Mikage instructs him to prepare the Volsunga magic circle to revive her. They place Ayaka in the center as Mikage explains the ritual. Honoka must kiss her and recite the incantation. Honoka freezes, shocked, and hesitates. Nervously, he leans in, but instead kisses her forehead. Hattori's doll mocks him for his cowardice and pushes him closer. Just before his lips touch hers, Ayaka suddenly draws a breath and opens her eyes.
It should have been me, not him!
Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kronmori traps the Weekend in her recreation world, binding her in chains. The Weekend laughs, mocking her defeat but confused about how Honoka survived. Kronmori explains that the Weekend underestimated Ayaka and Kazane. To the Weekend's shock, Kazane arrives, believing Kazane would remain imprisoned for weeks. The Weekend is stunned when Kazane reveals she regained her powers in just a single day. Kazane declares that she allowed her children to fight in her stead and now demands that the Weekend be punished for her crimes. Kronmori agrees, reminiscing about their long rivalry, but Kazane has no patience for small talk. When Kronmori attacks, Kazane effortlessly dodges and knocks her unconscious with a single blow. Days later, Honoka and Mikage meet Evermillion. Seeking answers, She reveals that when Ayaka was a child, she promised Evermillion she would eventually release Honoka's contract and return his power. While tangled in overlapping contracts, Evermillion concedes that agreements must be honored. Mikage advises Honoka to return to reality, where someone is waiting for him. Honoka awakens in his bed, realizing someone carried him home. Remembering that Ayaka has recovered, he heads to the door and finds her standing there. The two walk to school together, relieved that peace has returned. Honoka asks how she feels, and Ayaka admits she still needs time to regain her magic, but doubts she'll be using it anytime soon. Honoka says he hopes they'll live peacefully now, but Ayaka corrects him with a smile, declaring they'll live peacefully forever. Suddenly, Tanpopo and her friends arrive, frustrated by the couple's closeness. Tanpopo challenges Ayaka to finally settle their rivalry, and Honoka tries to intervene, but Ayaka insists on fighting despite not having her magic back. Tanpopo and her friends rush in, confident they'll win, but to their shock, Ayaka defeats them effortlessly without using a single spell. Honoka smiles as he watches, finally reassured that life has returned to normal and peaceful. If you watch this anime recap until the end, comment down below Magic Lizzie. And if you love anime recaps like this, watch this video.